with Matty D. Today is a really interesting episode. We've talked about before things like Project Healing Waters, where we have veterans who are seeking help by the way of fly fishing. We've talked to women about fly fishing. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. I have a gentleman who's going to join us, and that is this man right here, Dennis Flannery, who I met through my Fly Fishers of Virginia group. First of all, Dennis, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I have you on today because you're part of a program called Real Recovery. And this is for men who have cancer who are looking for lessening the impact on their daily lives from cancer by getting healing from fly fishing.
Right.
How did you get involved with this?
I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2017. Went to my first retreat after treatment was in 2018. Went to my first retreat in 2019. And on day 2 of a 3-day retreat, I signed up as a volunteer. It was that impactful for me.
Had you ever fly fished before this retreat?
I had a little bit years before out in Tennessee. Had actually tied a few of my own flies, but had gotten away from it.
Right. And what was it like walking into this first retreat? Was it fear, trepidation?
It was excitement, interest. It was a lot of things. Interesting. I was a little bit concerned. I was still kind of dealing with the after effects of treatment and the fact that I had cancer and that it could shorten my life. And but I was instantly at ease. The group gelled really quickly. A lot of it has to do with the facilitators, but a lot of it has to do with the fishing buddies themselves. And it was I was instantly at ease, I guess is the best way to put it.
And how did you find out about this group, Real Recovery?
I went to a prostate cancer support group. Bon Secours has a really good one. And one of the guys who had been on the past retreat got up and spoke about it. And I signed up probably 3-4 days later.
And so how many people are involved in a retreat between anglers and people who help as volunteers?
We can max out at about 30 people. So we, in Virginia, well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
So we're now an international organization. So this past year we added the UK. Last year we added Iceland and New Zealand. In Virginia we do 2 a year. There's 28 total across all the different retreats. In May, it's for any guy with any form of cancer. We've actually had some guys that have been in remission for 20 years. So it doesn't mean that somebody has to actively be fighting cancer. And then in October, it's for active military, retired military, and first responders fighting cancer. And so we max out at about 14 guys because over the course of 3 days, there's 5 courageous conversations. And it's actually kind of like group therapy disguised as fly fishing.
Right.
And so for every guy to be able to have the chance to share in a comfortable environment, 14 is about the maximum. There are 14 fishing buddies, or as many fishing buddies as we have participants. And then there's 5 staff people that we're all volunteers. Most of the people pay their own way to come up and volunteer. And so it gets up to about 33 people total, including some guests that come along.
So you said a lot there, and I want to kind of go a little bit slow. Okay, so you don't have to be actively fighting cancer. You can be in remission.
Right.
You can have had cancer. So it's open to anybody who once had or still has a diagnosis of cancer.
Right, any form of cancer.
Okay.
Yep.
And when you have these group meetings, are you kind of having that conversation with other members, like for you, somebody else who had prostate cancer, questions that you might have as to what you're dealing with, what you've went through, what they might be going through? Is it that kind of group therapy in a way?
It is. It starts out very low-key, talking about some innocuous things like your first car, what's your best memory of your first car, what can you share, what won't you share?
Right.
And then it gets into whatever you want to share about your diagnosis. Guys don't have to talk. It goes through the progression, right? So you talk about your disease and and what you've dealt with, and some of the hurdles you've had to face. A lot of it's insurance related. A lot of it's misdiagnoses that guys are struggling with. You know, how could they have missed this kind of thing? And then it gets into what you've lost as a result of cancer, and those are some pretty tough conversations.
I'm sure.
And then it gets into what we've gained from having cancer, and there are actually things that have gained. I mean, there's one of the silver linings is you can kind of see it coming, so to speak. And so there's an opportunity to be more intentional about your relationships, improve relationships with families, with spouses, with children, appreciate a sunrise and a sunset, maybe spend some time, more time on things that matter more and less time on things that don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And those are spread out over 3 days. And then there's about 15 hours on the stream as well. So as you know from fly fishing, you really can't think about much else when you're on the stream,
Right.
especially if you've never fly fished before.
Sure.
And most of the participants that come up have never fly fished. And so to learn how to cast a line, to do a roll cast, to not get caught in the trees and the weeds, to mend the line, to not get, you know, the line tied up around your feet, those kinds of things. There's just enough to occupy your mind where you don't think about it. And we consistently get feedback from guys that said, this is the first time in how many months that I haven't thought about having cancer. And so that's the part of the therapy, and it's the dichotomy of the program, where you're doing a deep dive on cancer, but you're also not even thinking about it.
And you said a retreat is about 3 days?
3 days.
Can you explain the kind of the timeline of the retreat?
Yeah. So the volunteers, we get there Sunday and Monday, get set up. The participants will get there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, get settled in. We stay at Graves Mountain Lodge. We're very grateful. They've given us super low rates over the years, and I don't think the rates changed in many years. And then they get settled into their digs. They have their first courageous conversation before dinner. And then at dinner time, they meet up with the fishing buddies and all the other participants. We have some great meals at Graves Mountain Lodge, stick to your ribs kind of meals. And that's just the initial meet and greet. And then they go into another courageous conversation. And then the next morning, we all get together for breakfast. Sometimes we'll do a courageous conversation before, sometimes we'll do it after. They'll pair up with their fishing buddy. We'll go down to Rose River Farm. Douglas Deer has been wonderful to us, gives us a great rate. He normally restricts the stream to 5 fly fishers
Right.
at a time, and he allows us to put up to 14 guys on the stream. We start with a vest signing ceremony where the guys will actually sign. Yeah, you've got a vest there.
Yeah.
That one's been retired.
I'm going to show this. I'm going to go this full screen. You can keep talking about this.
Guys will sign their vest, the year that they participated, the location, and they'll hear a little bit about the program, and some guys have come through it. There's been almost 5,000 guys have come through since 2002, nationally, internationally, and in Virginia, almost 500 guys have come through. And it's their introduction to the brotherhood that they have joined without asking. And they'll wear those vests throughout the day. They'll fish until lunch. Graves Mountain Lodge provides lunches, box lunches on one day, Mission Barbecue on the second day. Fish in the afternoon, some more courageous conversations, meals together. And then the same thing on Wednesday, and it concludes after lunch with a circle of strength. And I think you might have a picture there. The picture that's on the screen now is after that.
Is after that. So let's see, we have some fly fishing friends. Let me see if we can get this. Of course, people catching. We'll go through these step by step. I'm trying to look for.
It's funny, a lot of the guys who are pictured have also become volunteers like myself.
That's fantastic.
But the Circle of Strength, they've been asked to prepare and share with the group what they're taking home. And it's just really rewarding for me to hear guys' outlooks that have changed. You know, a lot of these guys come in with the deer in the headlight look, just got the diagnosis, are struggling with, you know, possibly an early end to their lives.
Right.
And then to hear them talk about what they're taking home and how it's impacted their life and how they have a deeper appreciation for the things that matter. It's just really cool.
Dennis, you keep saying courageous conversation.
Right.
I assume the first courageous conversation on that first night, let's say at 6 o'clock, because everybody arrives at 3, is probably a little more silent than the courageous conversation on day 2 in the morning.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some guys, it's just a real struggle for them to talk.
Sure.
There was one participant who he had been a referee, a soccer referee for NCAA tournaments. So at the highest level, he was a referee, running up and down the pitch, and then 2 months later could barely walk 10 feet. And he had something like 24 tumors in his body. And basically they were providing palliative treatments. There really wasn't much hope for a cure.
Right.
He really didn't want to come. And at first he couldn't even talk about it. He said, I have trouble talking to my wife about it. He said, I'm going to pass. We came back around to him, gave him an opportunity, no pressure, and he struggled through it. And it was very painful. And that was the very first courageous conversation at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on day 1.
Wow.
But then after that, the conversations were much easier. When it gets into discussions about what we've lost, sexuality, relationships, you know, there are some guys that talk about how people have kind of been absent from their lives because they don't know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. And some guys are angry about that. And so those discussions can be lively of a different sort. And then there's other discussions where, you know, guys are able to find humor in their journey and how people have handled it or haven't handled it, or conversations that they've had with doctors that, you know, just didn't seem to match up with the battle that they were in, you know?
And I gotta believe, I mean, Dennis, at this point in my life, I have never heard that word from a doctor. I'm sorry to say you have cancer. When you hear that word, I mean, everything just must stop in time at that point.
Yeah.
And you say, why me? How did this happen? And is that what a lot of the fellow anglers that you meet for the first time, are they still dealing with that, the why me, deer in the headlights type of thing, as you said?
Some still are.
Yeah.
Some have gotten past that. Some are still in denial. You know, I can't believe I have this. Some are actively engaged in their care. Some have kind of pretty much accepted it. There's guys with cancer all along the spectrum. There's some guys that have had it for 20 years. And it was helpful for me in my retreat to sit next to a guy that had prostate cancer like I did.
Right.
And he got it at 60 and he was, you know, 89 years old. And so what I find is I'm able to relate my story. I'm in the first courageous conversation. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's just the participants and the facilitator. But in my testimony, so to speak, I talk about how I have kind of reached a peace with the journey that I'm on. Mm-hmm. It's helpful for me that it's given me a purpose to be involved in this. It's therapy for me, and it's a reason that I do it. And every guy has a different story. And we allow guys to have different stories.
Right. When you're at your first retreat and you're 2 days in and you just decide, not only am I a participant, but I now want to volunteer, what did you see or what did you feel that made you have that switch? Was it just the brotherhood, the way things were taken care of?
It was the brotherhood. It was the hope that I felt in the room. There's a tremendous amount of hope expressed all throughout the 3 days. And it comes from different guys in different places and some unexpected places. Guys that have a terminal illness, and to hear them talk about the hope that they have about going home and repairing relationships with their kids they haven't talked to in years. Kids that they were struggling with how to handle the fact that their dad has cancer. Right. So it was mostly the hope that I felt, and I was willing to do anything. So for the first couple of years, I spoke to groups, I recruited participants, I raised funds, and then at a Fly Fishers of Virginia meeting, I ran into the coordinator for Fishing Buddies, Mac Myers.
Right.
And he asked me if I'd be interested in being a fishing buddy, and I jumped all over it.
And so how many years? So 2017 was your first retreat, is that correct?
No, 2019 was the first retreat.
Okay, 2017 was
right.
your first diagnosis.
17 was diagnosis, 18 was treatment, and 19 was my retreat.
So now we're sitting at 24, so minus the COVID year, 6 years
right.
roughly going strong,
yep.
helping out.
Yep.
when you have your interaction with anglers, participants, what is that like? You said everybody's different. Tell me a good story, like somebody who came in, was really closed up, and by the end opened up, and how did they feel? How did that all metamorphosis change?
There's been so many stories, and I don't know if I can share names.
You know, I don't want you to share names, for sure.
But there have been several guys that just couldn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And what opened them up to discussing it was asking, you know, how I got involved, and I told them about my cancer diagnosis. And then we found out that we had a similar path. We had a doctor that wasn't testing us, and as a result, we had, you know, I had a type 3B cancer that was a very aggressive cancer. Mm-hmm. Talked about some of the challenges we had with the medical procedures and not knowing where to go, having not a great experience with one doctor, a wonderful experience with another doctor. And then they start to talk about it. And a lot of times the fishing stops at that point because we're standing, you know, knee deep in the stream and we get talking about cancer. And then you realize at a certain point that, you know, it's time to kind of redirect and let's get fishing. You know, we've got lunch coming up in 2 hours. You know, you've only caught one fish. I have my pride. You know, I've heard of other guys holler when people catch fish, they'll holler fish on. We coach them. Mm-hmm. And so you're hearing that up and down the stream. It's like, I've heard this way too many times. We've caught one fish, let's get going. And so it kind of relieves the pressure a little bit.
And so this first picture here, we brought up a couple of times. It looks to me that this is kind of the pairing up that you were talking about.
No, this is actually after the Circle of Strength. So not to tip my hand about the surprise at the end, but at the Circle of Strength, the fishing buddies all stand behind the participant that they've guided throughout the 3 days. And sometimes they'll switch, sometimes participants and fishing buddies will switch. And so we're there as they kind of talk about what they're taking out of this, what they're bringing home. And then we have a little surprise for them. Gotcha. And there's a lot of hugs, there's a lot of tears. There's trading of phone numbers, emails, that kind of thing. A lot of these guys stay in contact with us and with each other over the years after the retreat.
I'm just quickly seeing if I have that other picture that you mentioned while we're chatting here as well.
Yeah, the website has one as well.
The website does have one. Yeah, I'm just seeing here. Yeah, I don't see the Circle of Strength one, so I'll go to the website. I'll bring that up full here. So, so this is the website, first of all. Yep. This is Real Recovery.
That was a veterans retreat in 2024.
Okay. And we're going to go through how to reach out in just a little bit here.
Yeah.
But if you want to, this was obviously featured on the Today Show.
Right.
It's probably been featured in many other areas as well. The goals, the purpose, you know, the story of how it was founded. It really goes into great detail. There's phone numbers to reach. The actual head office is located in Massachusetts.
Right.
But as you said, and let me go back up to the top here, you can look at the retreats and you could see the retreat schedule.
Right.
And this takes us down into where you are, whether it's in Virginia or Texas. There's some all over, and this is the one that you mentioned, Syria, which is
Madison County, Graves Mountain Lodge, really,
right.
And Rose River Farm, right?
And it tells you all that, and there's the application.
Right.
So walk us through a little bit, and I'm going to bring you back up on camera here. What is the process? So I've been diagnosed with cancer. I'm going through my treatment, and I find out by watching Off the Hook with Matty D, or maybe I've gone to a support group, and I've now heard about Real Recovery. How do I join the group? How do I get to meet fellow people who are dealing with the same type of thing or different cancers that I kind of need that support from?
Right. So go to the website. You go down to the application and medical release. Download both of those, complete those, and submit them. The doctor has to sign off that you actually have a form of cancer, a stage of cancer, and then that goes to the national office, and then they will send the completed application with the commitment to a particular retreat date. And Joe Gallagher, who's the head volunteer, he contacts the participants, confirms their participation, goes through, makes sure that we understand any allergies, mobility restrictions, dietary restrictions, those kinds of things, make sure we have their sizes. Orvis is very good to us. They provide all the equipment, so we get them fitted for waders and boots and wading staffs and fly rods and all the reels and all that kind of stuff. And then if it's a volunteer that's completed an application, that will come to me, and I would reach out to them, make sure they understand the program, the costs that are associated with it, the requirements. We kind of vet them to make sure that they are the kind of guy that would be a good buddy first and foremost, but also an experienced fisherman. Like I said, a lot of these guys have never fly fished before, the participants. And so if there's any question about their comfort level being an actual fishing guide, because there's a big difference, as you know, between being a fly fisherman and being a guide. And on Rose River Farm, it's a little bit easier, as you know. The process is to get them involved. We might have them shadow on a particular retreat. I usually have 2 guys that will shadow an existing or an experienced fishing buddy, and then it'll be up to that fishing buddy to say, okay, I'm gonna turn you on your own and you take over, and then they would support from there.
If you want to be a volunteer to help out, is it, you said vetting, are you looking for cancer survivors who fish so they can relate better, or is it just really good anglers that want to help out and are willing to lend that ear and listen?
We want really good anglers. We want them to have some experience fly fishing on their own. We actually have 2 volunteers that are fly casting instructors. We have 3 that are guides on their own, and we want them to be relatable, be a good fishing buddy. We don't want somebody who's going to not talk or be abrasive. So we coach them on that. Your first role is to be a buddy, but we want them to catch fish too. And so there has to be a certain level of experience where we feel like they would get them on the fish, get them casting, managing the line, and catching fish pretty early on. And so just through an initial discussion with the prospective volunteer, we kind of get a feel for how well they would do as a volunteer, as a fishing buddy, and then again have them shadow if there's any question. There's some guys that come in with a lot of referrals, a lot of guys that already know them. They don't have to have cancer. They don't have to have an experience with cancer. That's just a bonus. If they've, so to speak, if they've had cancer and dealt with it, then chances are they're going to be a really good buddy. And then we also want to make sure that they would be a good fishing guide.
And so once they're paired off, Rose River Farm is about 3 miles, a little bit more, right? So you're kind of spread out, but you can still see and, as you said, hear the hooting and hollering and going, we got to get on our game here a little bit. But there's a camaraderie to that, for sure, right? I mean, because you take the pictures, you know, I've always found to be able to catch a trout on a fly rod, you have done something really incredible, especially if it's dry fly fishing. You have fooled that fish into thinking that it is natural and it is attacked on the surface. And there's a skill and an art, and to be able to learn that in one afternoon or a couple of hours, it takes many years of mastery, for sure.
Yeah, if anybody has tried fly fishing before, they know that you spend several of the first few years in the wilderness, so to speak, more catching tree limbs and bushes and untying knots than you would allude to. And so to be able to get on the stream that quickly and catch fish, it's unusual for somebody not to catch fish first morning, and it is more the case that guys will catch multiples of fish the first 4 or 5 hours on the stream, which is it's really a testament to the guys that we have as fishing buddies.
Right, and that makes the difference. And as you said, while you're there and you're fishing, you're lost in that world of mending the line and doing all those particulars where you don't remember that you have a care in the world, or caring about the fact that you've been diagnosed with cancer.
And there's something about standing knee deep in the water rushing around you, there's that saying that trout inhabit beautiful environments, or trout don't inhabit ugly environments, however you want to look at it. And then the meditative, as you know, the meditative action of working the rod, it's all about the technique. It's not about muscling it. It's very relaxing. Once you get into it and you've got some level of skill.
It really makes it fun. Here's a picture of, I assume it's a buddy and a participant reading the stream, probably explaining.
That's Andy Klein there, one of our fishing buddies. He's a retired ear, nose, and throat doc, I think.
And there is also that skill too. When you have a first-time angler of any way, shape, or form, forget about fly fishing, you've got to explain, okay, you see the foam line, you see the riffle, you see the eddy. Those are places where fish are going to.
Now put it there.
Is it? Yeah, now put it there, right. And here's the tree.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it, and then to end up with the fish in the net just makes it so much fun there.
Yep.
So going back, you said that Orvis supplies the waders, the rods, the reels, the line. They really equip all of the participants.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yep.
That's really
They're
great.
huge supporters.
Yeah, that's really great here. This gentleman right here, I mean, holding the fish above the net.
Yeah, he had never caught a trout before.
Wow.
And that's
It's not
Tony,
a small trout.
Yeah, Tony is a fishing buddy with us, but he's also, I think he's a program lead for Project Healing Waters in Richmond.
Mm-hmm. What a beautiful fish. Absolutely beautiful fish. We'll continue on with a couple of pictures here. The water is super clear, and that also makes it a challenge too.
It does.
Because if you can see them, they can see you,
exactly,
as we all know, right?
Yeah.
So it's always about approaching the water slowly and standing back.
Yep.
Just great stuff here. Another gorgeous fish. How come I don't see you as a angling guide here, Dennis? You have skills.
Yeah, well, you know, now I'm in charge of the fishing buddy, so
Right.
I don't spend much time on the stream.
You got to do all the administrative stuff, now,
Right, yeah.
which is more than
I get to see the results, but every now and then I'll step in.
it's just great stuff. Look at that. The smiles, the excitement.
Yep, a lot of laughs, a lot of smiles. It's
And
it's just something else.
And I'm noticing something here as we're looking at the pictures. As we all know, cancer affects people of all ages.
Right.
So you're not limited to, well, you have to be 55 or older. It's
Right.
just having that diagnosis and being able to fill out the
And
application.
unfortunately, we have an awful lot of young guys, 20, 24, 30 years old that have, you know,
leukemia or something,
pretty rough prognosis. Yeah.
That's so tough for sure. I'm just grabbing a couple more shots. We went back to the beginning there. I like the group therapy. So on a 3-day retreat, it's really like 2.5 days of fishing.
Right.
At FFV, you told a story, sad to a point, in the fact that unfortunately in your position now, you get to deal with a lot of widows because some cancer patients do not survive, as
Right.
we know. But in one of your stories, you said that there was a widow who really thanked you all because she found her husband again.
Yes.
Dude.
The unfortunate part is of this role is I do end up speaking with a lot of widows. Right. I've spoken with 3 in the last 4 months. And how it comes about is a lot of times at the funeral, they'll ask people to, in lieu of flowers, donate money to Real Recovery. And so then I'll get a report from headquarters that said that, you know, 20 people and $500 was donated. And so I'll reach out to the family because it helps with an element of closure for them to know that people did respond and did honor their loved one with a donation. And in the course of that conversation, I hear every time, my husband was a different person. He came back with a better outlook. It improved his relationship with me, with our kids, with his family. This one widow, she, not the one that you remember that I spoke about at FFV, but another widow told me that he spoke to a brother he hadn't spoke to in years because of some long forgotten grievance, and reestablished great relationships with him, and his brother was there with them at the end. So those are the kind of payoffs that come through this program, unfortunately with a painful conversation, but
And that goes back to what you said earlier, is you look at life differently.
Absolutely.
You forget about the small stuff because it's insignificant, and you go back to the big stuff. That argument is insignificant. That's my brother. I need to reconnect with him.
Right.
That's my wife. I need not to be angry at her because of this diagnosis. Yeah, that makes, because we're partners in life at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of the anger goes away.
It does.
Yeah.
Over time, or through this program, or both?
Through this program and then afterwards.
Do you have repeat participants?
No.
You don't?
No, you can go once.
Oh, go once, okay.
Yep. Because we want to make sure that we're reaching as many guys as possible.
So it's go once, but then hopefully, like yourself, turn somebody into a volunteer.
Right.
And that happens more than not, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I have a list of about 50 fishing buddy volunteers, and it hasn't been a challenge yet, rotating guys through. We have a lot of experienced guys that, if I put the word out that say, I need to make some room for a new participant, will gladly bow out to get other people involved. The nature of volunteerism, if you don't get somebody signed up pretty quickly after they apply, you're probably going to lose them to another effort. So we try and work them in as quickly as possible.
All right, so and we're going to go, I'm going to bring the website back up here for a quick second here. When we go to retreats, this is realrecovery.org. It's at the top of the screen.
Yep.
And you go to the retreat schedule. I noticed in here, when we went to the full schedule itself, the schedule for Virginia was for May 5th through 7th.
Right, and there is a typo on there where it says learn more. It says if you click on it there.
Yep.
Primary service area, Utah, that's a typo. The primary service area is Virginia, Maryland, and D.C.
Gotcha, okay.
We'll get that changed.
So maximum 14, and you said that sometimes you get more than 14, you have a waiting list.
Yes.
And then things happen where the waiting list gets trimmed down because, as you mentioned when we were talking off air, somebody may have needed a knee replacement, but they couldn't get that done because they were undergoing chemo treatment, which
Right.
you can't have another major surgery. So things all of a sudden start to happen for that individual where it forces them to drop out.
Yeah, we always deal with a certain amount of attrition. So some guys will think that they can come, and then a daughter's getting married. Right. Or I need to get my knee replaced, the story I was telling you about. And it wasn't directly related to the cancer diagnosis, but they may have put off the knee replacement in order to go through treatment.
Right.
And then other guys they look at the forecast. There's, in October, a lot of times it's 25 degrees in the morning. And if you're dealing with treatments, it's really hard to stay warm even at 70 degrees. And they may just decide to put it off and come to a different retreat. So we're always dealing with a certain amount of attrition for various reasons, sometimes related to the cancer battle, but sometimes it's totally unrelated.
And so that actually hit back to where I was going with pulling the schedule up here. The May 5th through 7th
Right.
is for real recovery, but the October one is dealing with where you bring in first responders who are, once again, dealing with cancer as well.
Yeah, actually, May is any guy with any form of cancer.
Okay, gotcha.
October is for vets, active military, and first responders with cancer.
So strictly, the October is for those groups only.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they're already a brotherhood of sorts. They tend to gel a little bit quicker.
Right.
It's one of the more rewarding retreats. There's a lot of friendly ribbing that goes on amongst the members of different branches. And because they're already part of a brotherhood from their past service, they tend to gel quicker into a brotherhood of cancer patients having served. And we hear a lot of great stories, some that I can't repeat.
That's okay. We'll let those stay on the river. What do they say? What's set on the river stays on the river.
Well,
right?
and now I will tell a story. There was a Marine who was actually at a battle in Vietnam that's featured in We Were Soldiers. And he got talking about his experience. It was the very first battle that he had seen, and talks about flying in on a helicopter 15 feet up, getting shot at. There's bodies all over the place. The pilot didn't want to land, said, you're going to have to jump. So they jumped from 10 to 15 up. And in the process of him telling that, there was an Army corpsman who was also in that same group, who had actually been in that battle. And ended up talking, and we overheard the conversation where they realized that they had been at the same place at the same time and probably had met each other at that battle.
And didn't even know.
Didn't even know it.
Wow, incredible. Really, I guess you just don't know how small the world
Right,
is
yeah.
at that point, for sure. Wanted to also point one more thing out on the website here. Again, realrecovery.org. There is a shop which is part of the year-end giving campaign. If you are watching this right now and you cannot volunteer or you want to just help out, you can make a $75 donation, a $150 donation, and help out this wonderful organization. You can see the different levels there as well. I think everybody who can should find a way to give in some way. Like yourself, you volunteer and
Right.
And then do administrative stuff for this, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're entirely volunteer run, and again, you know, it costs about $20,000 a year to run both retreats. And so every year we're talking to different organizations and individuals to try and raise the funds to maximize participation.
Very good. Dennis, I want to thank you so much again for coming on this program, Off the Hook with Matty D. It's been an education for me, and I wish you the best
Thank you.
moving forward.
Matt, I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again at another FFB function.
We'll be there.
But thanks for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And again, if you want to find out more about Real Recovery, please go to realrecovery.org.
There's a circle of strength.
Oh, is that on that right
Yeah.
there? We go right back to that.
Yeah.
Go back to that year-end campaign. And, come on.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Right there.
Yep.
Circle of Strength. I'll bring Dennis right back in there. Oh, and it went away. But anyway, once again, realrecovery.org. Help them out. Volunteer if you can. And if you are a person, a gentleman who's going through cancer, find out about a local retreat. Click on the retreat schedule. Go to the one in Virginia, and you'll be able to find out more. And make sure you get a doctor's note on that. Once again, this has been Off the Hook with Matty D. I appreciate you being with me, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another episode. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D.